Okay, this is just going to be another design build. I don't have a set of plans set up for this. We're just going to take some of this old fence picket and repurpose it into part of a light fixture. All I got here right now are pretty much all the long pieces that I have left. I'm going to try to stay within that 21 by, I'm going to call it 21 by 12. It's probably not going to turn out exact, so what I want to do is see how many 21-inch pieces I have and measure how many pickets I need. I think it's going to come close to about 4 of them, and just start working with it, start putting it together. I've already checked to see that I have 4 boards that are going to be long enough for what I need. So the first thing I want to do is square off one end of the board, like I'm about to do here. And then I want to measure from the new cut over 21 inches, since I'm going for a 21-inch long cut piece. So we mark it. Then we're going to take a square and extend our lines. Then you'll see that I will also measure twice and cut once. That would be a very good tip for everyone to follow. There you go. Now I want to repeat that same process for 4 boards. Then you are going to want to take those 4 boards that you just got through cutting and kind of line them up next to each other, just to make sure that they're all even on each end. And then you want to measure crossways to get a measurement for, we're going to cut a piece that's going to go perpendicular to those 4 boards, and what that's going to do is give it more of a design feel. You'll see more of what I'm talking about here in just a second. Now that you have your measurement crossways across those 4 boards, you want to go ahead and get a couple new pieces of fence picket and measure for that distance. I believe for our little medallion here, it ended up being 13 3/4. You know, and then get your mark and extend your lines, and then set up your miter saw and go ahead and cut it to your mark. And you want to do that 2 times. So you need 2 pieces of the board that are going to go crossways that will be perpendicular to the 4 that you just did earlier. Now another one of these situations where it comes time to the creativity. Now I'm choosing my fasteners. The first one I showed you was a galvanized nail, and the second one was kind of like a chicken wire staple. And that third one is basically just a galvanized finished nail, and that's what I'm doing. That's what I've decided to go with here. Now would be a good time to go ahead and take those pieces that we just got through cutting and just give them a good sanding. All you really want to do is just kind of knock some things down. You really don't want to remove a whole lot of the graying, you know, just to maintain that rustic feel. And all I'm doing here is just taking some 120, you know, kind of knocking off the rough spots, and then I'm going to follow up with a 220 grit sandpaper and basically just finish smoothing them out. This way is just a lot easier to get the sanding out of the way, as opposed to waiting to assemble it all. And, you know, it'll be a lot more difficult to get in everywhere to sand everything. So now we want to take the 4 pieces, the longer pieces, and line them up next to each other like you see here. And we want to measure in 1 inches from both sides. And what that's going to do is give us a reference point for our cross pieces to attach to. And you'll see as this thing starts coming together why we're doing all this. Now we're ready to start assembling this guy. We're going to use glue and nails. So you want to get some glue kind of in the general area where those cross pieces are going to go with your first piece of board, and just kind of get a good spread on your glue, a good even spread. Okay, now let's take our first cross piece, align it with the 1 inch reference mark that we marked earlier before, and take your hammer and nail and start in one corner. All right. Then you want to take a square and make sure you're good and square, that your cross pieces is perpendicular to the first board, and then take a nail and caddy corner and nail it in like you see here. We want to do that with both sides. Now at this point, it's just going to just start coming together. You want to still apply the glue in the general areas on each board as you work your way across, like we've done here, and just start nailing these guys in place. With this one, I went with kind of like a little bit of a zigzag pattern. I'm not trying to be perfect or anything with it. So, this is kind of has like a little bit of a rustic feel to it. And that's about it. Okay, now we want to start turning this guy into a little bit of a box. And, like I've said before, everything I do is basically design build. And now I'm trying to figure out a good way to attach some side pieces to this face side to basically give us a box for all our electrical connections to be inside of. And we'll show you how I get around that here in just a second. Normally what I would do is take what I want to use for side pieces to the table saw and cut them to fit. But since I'm trying to make this a limited tools project, I decided not to do that. And as you can see here, I grabbed some scrap 2x4s that I've had laying around the shop, and I'm just going to cut everything to fit on top of that plate. And you'll start seeing how all this will start coming together here in just a second. When you attach these 2x4s to your faceplate, you want to make sure you don't drive your screw all the way through the front side of your faceplate. So just be careful with that. And all this 2x4 is going to do is basically just give us a good surface area for our side pieces to attach to. Now we want to take one of our side pieces and start off by cutting a 45-degree miter on one end. All right, now take your side piece and align it on one edge like you see here. Make sure everything's good and flush and lined up properly, and then mark where everything meets on the opposite end, and then just transfer your marks. Okay, now would be a good idea to go ahead and mark the edge of your board for the orientation of the angle that you need to cut on your miter saw. It's just a good way to remind you, how your board needs to be positioned inside your saw. That way you cut the correct angle. Now just apply your glue to the 2x4 section of your boards, and just take your side piece, make sure everything's aligned on the front side and on your miters, and then just start driving some nails through the side piece into the 2x4. Now we just need to just repeat this process until you work yourself around on all four sides of the medallion. When you have completed all four sides, this is what you'll end up with right here. We got a nice looking little rustic looking medallion here. It's got some reveals around the edge, and it looks pretty good. Now all we need to do is basically just lay out our holes where our wiring is going to drop from, that's going to terminate to our mason jars. We're just going to go with 3 mason jars, so I'll put one in the middle and basically put even distance on each side, and this time around I'm actually going to put the mason jars in line. So now just take a drill bit and drill out your holes for your wiring, and just make sure that they're holes big enough for whatever cable you're going to go with. For this one, we're going to use a 3/8 inch drill bit, simply because of the size of the cable that I am going to use. For this setup, you're going to want to go to your home improvement center and pick up what they call an offset swivel mounting bracket. Now, with a threaded rod already inserted into the medallion in the middle there, you want to take that offset swivel and, turn them 90 degrees from each other, perpendicular, kind of like an X, and then set it inside or slide it onto your threaded rod rather. You kind of get it kind of squared as best you can. And then what you're going to do is you're going to mark where your mounting screw would go through the medallion and into the mounting bracket. So that takes care of that part. Okay, that is the hole that I marked on the medallion, because that is actually the straightest line on your mounting bracket. Now get a 1/8 inch drill bit and drill out those two holes that you just marked. And what those holes are going to be for is for your 632 screws, which is also basically going to be your mounting screws to go through and thread into that swivel mounting bracket. Now here's a close-up of what the 632 screw looks like, and what I would do is I would just get probably about a 2.5 inch, depending on the thickness of your medallion. What you're looking at here is what they call a finish washer that I grabbed over in the hardware department, and it's basically just kind of concave in the center, which allows that tapered head on your 632 screw to go through and give you more of a flush look when your screw goes, or your mounting hardware goes through your medallion. Before we go into the wiring part of it, I just want to let you guys know right off the bat that I am a licensed journeyman electrician through the state of Texas, so you can pretty much trust the information I'm going to give you on all the electrical part of it. I have well over 15 years experience, and hopefully that'll make you feel better about what we're about to go into. But what we need to do before we go into all the wiring is talk about the actual length of your wiring or cable that you're going to need from your medallion down to your mason jars and all that. So with that being said, we need to talk about some standards here. Most dining room tables are 28 to 30 inches high. For this discussion, we're going to just say our dining table is 30 inches. I would say take a tape measure and measure from the floor to the top of your table. That way you can get an accurate measurement. All right. Now most ceilings are 8 feet tall, which is 96 inches. That's pretty much the standard in most homes. Now one of the things that you may need to take into consideration is, like for us, when I do our chandeliers, I'm going to have to take the measurement of a recess. I have a recess in my ceiling here where the actual ceiling goes up, where the chandelier will be mounted in. I have that in the dining room as well in the breakfast nook. So again, take a measurement from where your chandelier will be mounted from down to the floor. Okay. If you have just a flat ceiling, no recess, stick with the 96 inches, okay? Now, the other standard we need to point out is that the standard distance from the top of the table to the bottom of your chandelier, so that's going to be the bottom of the actual mason jar, is about 30 inches, okay? That's pretty much the standard that everybody goes by. I've been doing this for years. That's kind of what we do. But then again, there's been situations to where I've gone into a customer's home. They wanted it lower or higher or whatever. So I'm just giving you standards for figuring out cabling. You can adjust it to however you want to. Okay. So let's do some math here. So you're going to go, we're going with the 30 inches for the table height, and we need to take into consideration of the 30 inches clearance from the chandelier to the top of the table, which you're going to add those numbers together and we come up with 60 inches. Okay? Now, we need to take the standard ceiling height, we're going with 96 inches minus the table plus the clearance, which we just figured out, which is going to be the 96 inches minus the 60 inches. That's going to give you a total height of the actual chandelier needs to be 36 inches, okay? That keeps you within standard. Now, with that 36 inches, you also need to take into consideration of the actual thickness that your chandelier medallion is going to suspend from the ceiling, okay? And take that number and subtract it from the 36 inches, then you will have a total length of your cabling and your wiring, okay? And actually that total length needs to be from the bottom of your mason jar to the medallion. So, and you'll see me do a better demonstration of that here in just a few minutes. So, and you know, really, if you guys have any questions about anything that we're doing with these 2 episodes or whatever, man, absolutely, just ask questions. You know, I don't mind answering those questions at all. You can leave those questions in the comment section, or you can also go to my Hammered at Home Facebook account and post your questions there. That's really what I'm here for. So let's move on. Okay, we're going to talk about this this cable here. Some things that you need to know. Most people are probably most likely going to use lamp cord. For this one, I'm actually going to be using an old extension cord that I have laying around, but they're basically going to be the same. All right. Hopefully you'll be able to see with this video, but if you take a closer look at the cord, it's a 2-conductor cord and it's kind of flat. Now, one side of that cord is going to be kind of smooth and flat. The other side is going to be kind of ribbed or ridged, and sometimes they'll have lettering on it. Now, this is what this tells you. Now, the smooth side without any lettering or anything like that, that is going to be your hot wire. That is going to be the wire that terminates to the brass screw, which you will see as we move forward. Now, the other side of the cable that has the ribs on it or any lettering on it, that is your neutral wire, or also your white wire. That is the wire that's going to terminate to the silver screw on your keyless socket. Again, you'll see this as we move forward. So there's that. Now what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to get the 2 conductors separated so I can get them ready to be stripped and terminated to our keyless socket. So we will do that step. Okay, you basically want to kind of split the 2 conductors roughly about 2 inches, and that'll give you enough room to work with. Now you want to go ahead and just pretty much take your keyless socket off of the lid assembly there, just like that. Okay, now take your cable and go through the top of your lid assembly inside your threaded rod and pull it through to the other end, and then give yourself plenty of room, plenty of slack to work with your conductors here. Okay, now take your cabling and work it through the top of the keyless socket where your threaded rod threads into, and then again pull enough to give you some cables to work with. Now let's strip off about a 1/4 inch of insulation on both of the conductors, like you see here. Now you want to take your stake on and put them on your conductors, and then take your crimper and then crimp down on them, and make sure you get a good crimp on there, and always make sure that it doesn't slide off or anything like that. So there's that part. Now what I like to do is take that stake on and where the forks are and bend them back like you see, like I'm doing here. This will just make it a lot easier for the terminating. This is one of those experienced things here. So would be a good tip. Now kind of really pay attention to what's going on here. Now you're going to take your first wire and you have to make absolutely sure you take the correct wire to the correct screw. Remember, the smooth conductor on that cable is your hot. He goes to the brass screw. The conductor that has the rib ridge or some writing on it, he goes to the silver screw. That is very important that you do that. You don't want to get those mixed up. And once you get all that terminated in the right spots, tighten down on the screw. Make sure you have a good connection, nothing's loose, and also you want to verify that absolutely no copper or no metal is touching another piece of metal or touching each other. Meaning that you want to make sure like the hot side and the neutral side are not touching each other, as well as that top part of the keyless socket that has the metal screw where the threaded rod goes into. So please make sure you double check all that. Then you want to kind of bend them down a little bit, and then that's going to make it a lot more easier to slide everything back in place. I just want to say that if you don't check to make sure that nothing is touching, no copper or wiring is touching metal and stuff like that, if you don't check that and it is in fact touching each other or touching metal, you will create a short and it will trip your breaker. So you just kind of take your time, work the cabling back, take that lid assembly down like you see there, and then just thread it back into the keyless socket. And that's pretty much set to go right there. And just repeat all of that for however many lamps you want. There you go. Let's go ahead and put the lamp together. So basically what we're doing is just putting the mason jar and the lid assembly completely together like we're doing here, and get you some kind of a measuring instrument like a yardstick or a tape measure. And you want to take the mason jar, the bottom of the mason jar, and line it up on, the 0 inches, and then stretch out your cabling all the way out to however long you've already figured out for what you need it to be. And then take a piece of tape or something and mark that measurement there. Now you're ready to start feeding your cabling into your medallion. Make sure you just feed enough in and stop right at the mark. Now, I left this part off on the material list that you'll need, so you might want to write this down if you're taking any notes. But what you're seeing here is some cable staples that you could pick up in the electrical department as well, and you want to use that to secure the cable to the medallion from the inside so the cable doesn't come sliding out, Well, that's all there is to it, hopefully I showed you a good way to actually make your own chandelier, It's really not that much to it. It's not that hard. The next step to do now is to actually install it, and, just take it from me. That really needs to be left to a professional to do. If you already feel comfortable installing your own light fixture, then you really don't need to see a video segment of me installing one. But I do want to point out something that does come up when installing a chandelier. this happens quite a bit too. You know, a lot of times in an older home, your ceiling outlet box for a light fixture is not going to be sufficient enough to support the weight of a chandelier. Now keep in mind, this all kind of depends on, you know, how heavy you make your chandelier. We categorize them as, you know, a small, medium, and a large chandelier, and each one has its own standard for an install. And what I'm getting at is, if your chandelier is going to be too heavy, a lot of times the electrician may come up to you and say, hey, you know, your box is not sufficient enough to support your light fixture, and we need to install what we call a fan rated box. And you know, we really need to listen to that, because ultimately all it is doing is protecting you. You know, if it's not properly installed, that ceiling fixture or chandelier could possibly fall out of the ceiling and hurt somebody. Now, I'm going to tell you, I'll be honest with you, there's been a few times I've gone to a customer's home where I've seen that their outlet box is not sufficient enough to support a chandelier, and I've even taken the customer and showed them, try to give them a visual aid on why I'm saying that, and then they'll turn around and they'll say, well, I don't need that, because you do have to pay extra for that. Well, every time a customer has told me, or a homeowner has told me that I don't need that, then I will turn around and say that I am not going to install it. I'm just not. I'm not going to be responsible for somebody in your home to get hurt. Okay? That's just the proper way, the professional way to do things. And you know, that pretty much covers all that part. And you know, really with these two-part videos on Mason Jar Chandelier, I was really aiming at trying to prove to you guys how simple it is to make one. And that's why the medallions that I made were so simple, and maybe some of you guys might think it's bland or whatever, but I was just trying to prove how easy it is to make one. Now granted, when I do the ones for our dining room, it's going to be a whole lot more involved in it, and so I just figured it'd be better to just kind of start off small before I jump into the big one. So that, you know, that's pretty much it. You know, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and hopefully maybe you guys will make your own. I would love to see it. You know, show me. And another thing too is, if you're liking what I'm doing, please subscribe and like the videos. That really actually helps me out. And also go to my Hammered at Home Facebook page and like and follow. You know, only, you know, that's if you guys are liking what I'm doing. And I have more coming. Absolutely, I have a lot of projects that are in the plans that I am going to do. So, you know, that's pretty much it. I think I'm just going to wrap it up right there and just say, salute.